Hey everybody, this one is about do-it-yourself, how to get compensation for labor. That's a big issue nowadays, has been for some time. I can tell you what I've done and what I did that works and what I didn't argue and did argue. I've been to the Supreme Court 4 times. Well, let's get going here. Um, First of all, let's announce my new YouTube channel called Sovereignty International. This is a subscription-based YouTube channel. It's going to have everything that I have in my other channel, but it's going to avoid the advertising. The only power that the New World Order Satanists have over us is through fraud and deception. And my agenda is to expose it all for all of our benefit. And so, I was originally thinking about having exclusive material on there, but I can't think of anything that I wouldn't want to have make available to everybody just because of with the agenda of exposing all the fraud and deception. And so I am just not sure what I can put up there exclusive to be exclusive. Now, I may have something exclusive up there at some point, but at this point, I'm not. And so, the only advantage is that you won't have to deal with the advertising. I'm currently publishing, I'm going to 4 videos a week now, and coming up, people are giving me ideas on stuff I can do, and so I may even go to 5. Yeah, it's just barely gone to 4. So you'll get for $1.99 a month, you'll get no advertising. So back to the issue of getting compensation for labor. The whole system is set up for slavery. Okay, the Roman cult. As long as the Roman cult is around, there's going to be slavery. Technically, government employees are the only slaves, but actually they are not even slaves. It's only because of the Roman cult. Prior to the Civil War, the statutes at large talked about compensation for labor for government employees even. So the Satanists try to get you diverted by telling you that you're a quote-unquote employee, but the real issue is compensation for labor, and none of us will ever see any justice as long as the Roman cult is around and running the courts. There's 2 possible scenarios. Okay, there's a scenario where you work in a W-2 situation as an employee, a quote-unquote employee, or and that's with government employees obviously would fall into that category, but also non-government employees working under a W-2 and contractors working under W-2. This is for the U.S., but you can figure that other foreign countries would be very similar. You can also work as a contractor. That's the other scenario. Okay, working as a contractor, you get a 1099. And it can be directly to you, or you can also have a corporation set up doing corp to corp, but it does not include contractors who work under a W-2. Okay, so there's the 2 scenarios. One, you get a 1099, and the other one is a W-2. The contractor is how I've worked since 2007, although quite frankly I haven't had a contract in 4 years, except for one I did about a year and a half ago, for about 6 weeks. I worked on the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter program, helped designing the hydraulic system on the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. I've also worked for airlines as a contractor. I manage a trust that owns a limited liability company. I also manage the limited liability company. The limited liability company files a 1065, which is a reporting tax return only. And many companies are refusing to do corp to corp, so they're trying to make it more and more difficult. And this is not cheap to set up, but if it's done, it works very well. So that's one scenario that is possible. If you're already an employee, or you know, don't want to go through the trouble of doing the 1099 stuff, or the company that you want to work for doesn't want to do it, then the employee route is the only other way. I left U.S. Airways in 2006 because the U.S. Airways thieves, in conspiracy with the IRS thieves, were stealing my compensation for labor. I took them to the U.S. Supreme Court bail priests. I subsequently took the IRS thieves to the U.S. Supreme Court bail priests again. So the first time I went there, I took the U.S. Airways and the IRS thieves together to the Supreme Court. And then after I took the IRS thieves by themselves to the Supreme Court. In both cases, the U.S. Department of so-called Justice, which is what I called them in the case, waived their right to respond. Okay, now you have to understand how it works with the U.S. Supreme Court. If you look in their rules, it says that they can turn away any case that they want. And I actually met someone who had been to the Supreme Court, and they refused to hear it. I don't know if you remember the guy by the name of Michael New in the 90s. He refused to wear a UN patch. He was in the U.S. Army, and they wanted him to wear a UN patch, and he refused to wear it. And so they dishonorably discharged him, and he filed a lawsuit. And it ultimately wound up in the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court refused to hear it. And they told me that when that happens, I met his father, actually, at a meeting one time. And he told me that when that happens, that they don't even docket the case. They just refuse to hear it. And so under their own rules, they can refuse to hear it. And every case, I've been to the Supreme Court 4 times. Every case, I told them they had no right to turn it away, and they had no right to charge me any fees. And every case, I got a docketing number, and I send out the docketing number to the respondents. And so every case was accepted by the Supreme Court. And then every case, the Department of so-called Justice, which is what I call them in the case, waived their right to respond, which takes away the controversy. And so then there's nothing to rule on. When they waive their right to respond, they're saying, yeah, okay, so what? We know about that. And so, they're a bunch of Satanists is what they are. They're Satanists, they're thieves, and Judgment Day's coming for these Satanist pigs. Anyways, yeah, that's my little rant for today. Employee legal arguments. Now, if you have already provided a Social Security number, which is evidence of their cestui trust slave, it's going to be very difficult, okay? You will need to change your W-2, which is your quote-unquote voluntary withholding agreement that if you don't sign, they'll fire you over. You cannot file exempt, okay? Because the requirement for filing exempt is that you did not pay last year. And if you're already working for the company, then you paid last year. They won't let you file exempt. You can use arguments contained in this presentation, but once they have the badge of slavery, which is the Social Security number, it is very difficult unless you're prepared to work somewhere else. And so if you're prepared to quit and go down the road, then it can be a lot easier. But that's not to say that it's impossible, okay? Because you can still... and then once you're working there, that's kind of a two-edged sword, because once you're working there, in order for them to fire you, they have to build a case against you. And as long as you're doing a good job and everything, that is difficult. But if they have layoffs, and nowadays the economy is a basket case, I'm not sure that people want to jeopardize their position these days, given the economy being in such a basket case these days. If you haven't provided a Social Security number, then you will probably have to file a lawsuit. The employer is gonna say that they're responsible for the taxes if you do not pay, and that's true. The IRS will demand it from the employer. We can go over some of the arguments that I did not bring up in my previous 2 cases. All judges have the capacity of operating as an Article 3 judge, but refuse to do so because they want to collect their royalty. Okay, they're Satanist Baal priests. It's all coming from the UN. I've got a video that talks about all courts are United Nations courts. Okay, so they're Satanist Baal priests and refuse to operate as an Article 3 judge. They fabricate evidence of their slave. They do all sorts of stuff. So anyways, this is 26 United States Code, Section 6109. Talks about supplying of identifying numbers when required by regulations prescribed by the Secretary. And basically it talks about you're supposed to provide numbers, okay? And so the Social Security number. Paragraph 3 is the one of interest. It says furnishing number of another person. Any person required under the authority of this title to make a return statement or other document with respect to another person shall request from such other person the number, okay? And then it goes on, for purposes of paragraph 1, 2, and 3, the identifying number of an individual or his estate, okay? So they know that it's the estate shall be such individual's Social Security account number, okay? So this is all they know. It's the cestui trust. So for regulations, and for those of you who do not know this, regulations for Title 26, United States Code 6109, are found at Title 26, the Code of Federal Regulations 6109. And but they do put a 301 suffix, which I know it means something, but I'm not sure quite what it is right now. But so then if you go to the 26 CFR 301.6109-1, you'll find the requirements or the regulations for Title 26 United States Code Section 6109. And it talks about requirement to furnish one's own number. U.S. persons, every U.S. person who makes under this title a return statement or other document must furnish its own taxpayer identification number as required by the forms and the accompanying instructions. And it goes on, required to furnish another's number, every person, and where you see these dots, I've left stuff out because this is quite lengthy. Anyways, every person required under this title must furnish such taxpayer identification numbers of other U.S. persons and foreign persons. If the person making the return statement or the document does not know the taxpayer identification number of the other person, such person must request the person's number. And when the person making the return statement or the document does not know the number of the other person and has complied with the request provision of this paragraph, such person must sign an affidavit on the transmittal document form such return statements or the documents to the IRS so stating. Okay, so their only requirement is to request it and then submit an affidavit to the IRS stating that they requested it. Okay, that's their only requirements. But I got to tell you, I've been fired from numerous positions because I didn't provide it, and that's why I set up this company. And I had some friends, actually. I didn't set it up. I had some friends set it up, a trust and then a limited liability company, and it's worked really well when done properly. So if you're in the position that you're starting a new job and you don't want to do the W-2, then I would make an affidavit, right? They have to submit an affidavit, so make one of your own. So then that saves them the trouble. Okay, and so then that shows that they did their due diligence, and it shows that it's on you. Okay, so you make an affidavit stating that a Social Security number is a number for a cestui trust, and you're not a cestui trust, and you do not have a Social Security number, and you have never had a Social Security number. You know, when I sued the IRS and went to the Supreme Court the first time, I was working at U.S. Airways at the time, and they were stealing my compensation. So obviously they had a Social Security number, otherwise they wouldn't be stealing it. And so what happened was I went and submitted an affidavit to the Supreme Court, and it said, it was one page. It said, I don't have a Social Security number. I have never had a Social Security number. No problem. They know that it's not you. And so the point is that, you know, again, do you understand? Do you know who you are? Do you know what all of this is all about? If you do, then you shouldn't have any trouble doing that. Okay. I would tell them that I would tell the company that I'm trying to work for that I do not mind accepting responsibility for my actions, and I do not accept them to be responsible for my actions, and I would gladly do whatever they want me to do to make sure that they are not held responsible for my actions in this matter, okay? And that's true. You don't want them paying the tax that they would normally have to collect from you. And so you want to make sure that they're not responsible. So the bottom line is do not complete their W-2, do not provide a Social Security number. I have been fired from multiple positions for refusing to provide a Social Security number. I would also tell them that the cestui trust was created by the Roman cult, and I have a religious objection to being involved with the Roman cult. I would also tell them about freedom of religion as required by the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, by U.S. statutes, and by Article 1 and Amendment. And I would also tell them about their no slavery requirement under the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And this is Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, Volume 2, under the definition of mort main. It says, "Yet it was difficult to set bounds for ecclesiastical ingenuity, for when they were driven out of all their former holds, they devised a new method of conveyance, by which the lands were granted not to themselves directly, but to nominal fiefs to the use of the religious houses, thus distinguishing between the possession and the use, and receiving the actual profits, while a season of the land remained in the nominal fief, who was held by the courts of equity, then under the direction of the clergy," that's like the Roman cult, "to be bound in conscience to account to his cestui use for the rents and emoluments of the estate." Well, gee, that sounds like taxes. And it is to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of uses and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing. Well, this site speaks volumes, okay? Think about it. So, this is taken from Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, Volume 2, under the definition of mort main. And what it's saying is in 1835, the cestui trust was the foundation of modern conveyancing. And it also says the cestui trust was a creation of the Roman cult. And in 1835, the courts of equity were run by the Roman cult. Do you think anything's changed? Absolutely not. The Roman cult wanted to make sure they get their rent and emoluments, which is extortion, for their owned and operated cestui trust. And then when Congress passed a D.C. code in March 3rd of 1901 that's located at 31 Stat 1189, it says that the legal estate to be in the cestui use. And they're essentially saying that the Roman cult owns the United States. That's exactly what they're saying. And this is Henry Boland's 1912. "Every taxpayer is a cestui trust having sufficient interest in preventing the abuse of the trust to be recognized in the field of this court's prerogative jurisdiction." Okay, so a taxpayer is a cestui trust. That means a Social Security number is a number for a cestui trust. And this is Congressional Record, June 13th, 1967, pages 15,641 through 15,646. "A citizen of the United States is a civilly dead entity operating as co-trustee and co-beneficiary of the public charitable trust, the constructive cestui trust of U.S. Inc. under the 14th Amendment, which upholds the debt of the USA and U.S. Inc." And so, again, if anybody's ever looked at the Congressional Record, they'll know that this is a summary of 5 pages of the Congressional Record. Anyways, so it's also slavery, okay? Think about it. A slave is someone that works for nothing. Isn't that true? That's exactly what a slave is someone that's forced to work for nothing. And so, and under the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights, Article 8, it says, "No one shall be held in slavery. Slavery and the slave trade in all their forms shall be prohibited. No one shall be held in servitude." And that's exactly what they're doing. So the question is, where's the contract? That was what I said when I went to the Supreme Court the first time, is where's the contract? You know, these Satanist thieves, that's what they are. They're nothing but a bunch of thieves. It's the Roman cult. Anyways, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 2, Clause 1, says each state party to the present covenant undertakes to respect and ensure to all individuals within its territory and subject to its jurisdiction the rights recognized in the present covenant without distinction of any kind, such as race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national social origin, property, birth, or other status. This is all Roman cult. It's the United Nations, which is Roman law, and the Roman cult is what it is. And then under Article 18, it says, everyone shall have the right of freedom of conscience and religion. Well, I don't want to be a Roman cult member. That's exactly the bottom line. These Satanist whores. The right shall include freedom to have or to adopt a religion or belief of his choice, and freedom either individually or in community with others or in public or private to manifest his religion or belief in worship, observance, practice, and teaching. No one shall be subject to coercion which would impair his freedom to have or to adopt a religion or belief of his choice. These Satanists assault you with their Roman cult. Why do you think they call it the Catholic Church? Catholic means universal. That means they plan on assaulting everybody with it. That's exactly what they mean. And let me qualify here that I'm not talking about people who happen to be Catholic. Some of my best friends happen to be Catholic, and they are the ones that are pointing out a lot of this stuff to me, and so has nothing to do with people that happen to be Catholic. It has everything to do with this Roman cult that consists of people that happen to be in the Vatican. But it's not everybody that's in the Vatican either. So anyways, to move on, I would tell them that I have the right to pursue happiness, which is the right to engage in harmless activities for profit or gain, and it's found in the Declaration of Independence. I would tell them that they're converting a right into a privilege. This is Butchers Union Company versus Crescent City, U.S. Supreme Court. The property which every man has in his own labor, as it is the original foundation of all other property, so it is the most sacred and inviolable. The patrimony of the poor man lies in the strength and dexterity of his own hands, and to hinder his employing his strength and dexterity in what manner he thinks proper, without injury to his neighbor, is a plain violation of the most sacred property. Algier versus State of Louisiana, again, U.S. Supreme Court. The right to follow any of the common occupations of life is an inalienable right, and it was formulated as such under the phrase pursuit of happiness in the Declaration of Independence. Okay, so this is all coming from the Declaration of Independence. Every man has a natural right to the fruits of his own labor as generally admitted, and no other person can rightfully deprive him of those fruits and appropriate them against his will. U.S. Supreme Court. American jurisprudence, the right to labor and its protection from unlawful interference is a constitutional as well as a common law right. Every man has a natural right to the fruits of his own industry. Book 48, American Jurisprudence, page 80. The term liberty denotes not merely liberty, not merely freedom from bodily restraint, but also the right of the individual to contract and to engage in any of the common occupations of life. The established doctrine is that this liberty may not be interfered with under the guise of protecting public interest by legislative action. Included in the right of personal liberty is the right to make contracts for the acquisition of property. Chief among such contracts is that of personal employment, by which labor and other services are exchanged for money or other forms of property. Again, U.S. Supreme Court. Under Title 15, United States Code, Section 17, the labor of a human being is not a commodity or article of commerce. Okay, so they go and assault you with their commerce. That's exactly what they're doing. And this is, they're converting a right into a privilege. And the claim and exercise of a constitutional guaranteed right cannot be converted into a crime. No state shall convert a liberty into a privilege, license it, and charge a fee therefore. There can be no sanction or penalty imposed upon one because of his exercise of constitutional rights. If the state converts a right or liberty into a privilege, the citizen can ignore the license and fee and engage in the right and liberty with impunity. This is the same thing that precipitated the War of Independence. Statutes have been passed extending the courts of admiralty and vice admiralty far beyond their ancient limits for depriving us of the unaccustomed and inestimable privilege of trial by jury in cases affecting both life and property, to supersede the course of common law and instead thereof to publish and order the use and exercise of the law martial. And that's taken from the causes and necessities of taking up arms in 1775, the Declaration of Independence. He's combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury. This is the Revised Code of Washington, Legislative Declaration for Civil Liberties Day of Remembrance. The legislature recognizes that on February 19, 1942, the President of the United States issued Executive Order 9066, which authorized military rule over civilian lives. Okay, it's all martial law. And how do you know it's martial law? Well, one of the ways you know it's martial law is that, remember, it goes back to the causes and necessities for taking up arms. Is when they impose martial law, it supersedes common law. So there's no common law crimes. And that's what the courts are saying. There's no common law offenses against the United States, only those acts which Congress has forbidden with penalties for disobedience. And so it goes to it's all martial law. The same thing in Texas. And the reason it's the same in Texas is because the Texas that we're talking about this is a territorial Texas. It only applies to U.S. citizens. Under Texas law, no act or omission is a crime unless made so by statute. Legislature may create an offense and an insane enactment provide exceptions to its application. And a penal action is an action on a penal statute, an action for recovery of penalty given by statute. Where an action is founded entirely upon a statute, the only object of it is to recover the penalty or forfeiture. Such action is a penal action. The words penal and penalty in their strict and primary sense denote a punishment, whether corporal or pecuniary, imposed and enforced by the state for a crime or offense against its laws. The noun penalty is defined forfeiture to be forfeited for non-compliance with an agreement. They have to get you into a contract. That's why it's called a voluntary withholding agreement. The words forfeit and penalty are substantially synonymous. A penal action is one founded entirely on statute and brought with the sole object of recovering a penalty or forfeiture imposed as punishment for a specific offense, while remedial action is one brought to obtain compensation or indemnity. A penal action is one founded entirely on statute, and the only object is to recover a penalty or forfeiture imposed as a punishment for certain specific offense, while remedial action is one which is brought to obtain compensation or indemnity. A penal action is a civil suit brought for the recovery of a statutory forfeiture when inflicted as punishment for an offense against the public. Such actions are civil actions, on the one hand closely related to criminal prosecutions, but on the other to actions for private injuries in which the party aggrieved may, by statute, recover punitive damages. And this is The Law of Persons by Joseph R. Long, published 1912. And then the very first section, it says classification of persons. The Roman law distinguished three kinds of personal status. This is all coming from Roman law, our degree of legal capacity and classified human beings with respect thereto. And then in section 3, the loss of freedom, capitis diminutio maxima. A Roman citizen cannot legally be sold into slavery, but he might become a slave by condemnation for a crime, but by being captured by an enemy. Okay, so that's exactly, it's all slavery, and they sell you there. Okay, condemnation for crime is because of a statute, and again, the statutes are penal. It's a contract. Okay, so they still sell you into slavery or by captured by an enemy. Status, condition, situation, compare a state. A corporation has no status as a citizen outside the jurisdiction where it's created. Well, think about it. If a corporation is a citizen's a corporation. If they're assaulting you with their U.S. citizen slave, then you're in the District of Columbia. And Black's Law Dictionary 8th edition says the law of status, it's one of three departments into which Roman civil law is divided. So these people were Satanists. They lie. Everything they do is a lie. Ye are the father of the devil, and the lusts of your father you will do. He is a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. But the fearful and unbelieving and abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. So the point is never give up. It is never over until you say it's over. It behooves every man who values liberty of conscience for himself to resist invasions of it in case of others, or the case might change the circumstances, become his own. And Jefferson's talking about karma there, about what goes around comes around. If you love liberty, wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude better than the animating contest of freedom, go home from us in peace. We ask not your counsel or arms. Crouch down and lick the hands which fee you. May your chains set lightly upon you, and may our posterity forget that you are ever our countrymen. And nobody could say it better than Samuel Adams. When shall it be said in any country of the world, my poor are happy, neither ignorance or distress is to be found among them. My jails are empty of prisoners, my streets of beggars, the aged are not in want. The tax is not oppressive, the rational world is my friend, because I am friend of its happiness. When these things can be said, then may that country boast of its constitution and government. Well, I got to tell you that we have nothing to boast about here. The jails are populated by Satanist order followers running around populating the jails. The streets are full of beggars. The aged are in want. The taxes are oppressive. These people are nothing but a bunch of Satanist thieves. But if the watchmen see the sword come and blow the trumpet, and the people be not warned of the sword come and take any person from among them, he's taken his iniquity, but his blood will I require at the watchman's hands. This is my effort to make sure that I'm blameless on Judgment Day. Either you're part of the problem or you're part of the solution. You're now a watchman. I hope you're blameless too. Please circulate this video far and wide. I've got over 250 YouTube videos. Bankster Thieves 1, 2, and 3, Churchianity series, bankrupt corporate so-called governments, bar members 1, 2, and 3, do-it-yourself, how not to volunteer for the selected service of the draft. Martial laws here, do-it-yourself, no income tax, no sales tax, traffic stops 1 and 2, free mail 1 and 2, kangaroo courts 1, 2, 3, and 4. Copies of these documents can be found in my private group at Yahoo called Administrating Your Public Servants. I have YouTube videos that are videos of private information shares that show these and other court citations that are available for donation. And this last paragraph is for the Satanist order followers operating in their private capacity under the Federal Tax Lien Act of 1966, because they can put their privileges and benefits up their rectal orifice. I prefer gold or silver coin. But as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept their commercial paper IOUs, Federal Reserve notes, PayPal, gifts, checks, money orders, etc. Send me an email for particulars. If you find this useful, then you need to pay it forward. If you don't know what pay it forward means, then watch the movie. My blog is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email is engineerwin@yahoo. My YouTube profile is Sovereign Living. My Facebook community page, I deleted it because of censorship on the part of Facebook. My private group, Sovereignty International of Facebook, is in the process of being deleted because of censorship on the part of Facebook. My Yahoo private group is Administrating Your Public Servants, and my Google private group is Administrating Your Public Servants. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. I hope you get something out of it, and it gives you everything you need so that you can basically stop withholdings if you want to. Everything that I have, at least. I hope you have a real nice day.